Hello YouTube, this is Eric from Coder Snacks. I've recently gotten feedback about some of my videos that the coding sections look too skilled, and it feels like you'd have to code that well to pass a coding interview. This is absolutely not the case. Even in excellent interviews, there are always some mistakes. No one writes perfect code on the first try. At least I sure don't. As an interviewer, what's important to me is the thinking process and how one approaches a problem and handles their mistakes when they're pointed out. Today, we're going to begin a new series of videos, Coder Snacks Live. We'll take an interview question and do it live, no editing, bobbles and syntax errors and mistakes and all. Afterwards, we'll review the code and some of the moments during the interview to see how we can improve. Then, you'll be able to apply these lessons to your own interviews. Here's the problem we'll discuss today. Given a Unix path, make a simplified version of it. When we practice coding interview questions, there are many ways to do it. When you start preparing, you should use your normal development environment, including an IDE, a REPL, and any code tools you may have. This is faster, lets you iterate more quickly, and is better coding practice in general. When you get close to an interview, however, you should practice using a whiteboard, a piece of paper, or a plain text editor. We'll show some of this in later episodes. As you watch this video, pretend that you're the interviewer. Watch for mistakes I make and what bugs exist in the code as I write it. Think about how you would approach this problem and see what's different. Make a judgment about the code and about me as a candidate. So, let's get started.
Okay, here we go. So we have this problem from Facebook today, and it says, given an absolute path for a file Unix style, simplify it. For example, these two examples here. So algorithmically, this doesn't look like it's a very complex problem. And what I think when I see problems that are not algorithmically complex, I think that I'm going to have to check for details, right? This is going to be a problem where there are some edge cases that I want to make sure that I'm covering, and so let's take a look at that. So first, they've given us a couple of lovely test examples, but as always, let's talk about some questions. So the first kind of questions I might ask here are like, what kinds of characters are you expecting to be in this thing? Am I going to have to worry about like Unicode characters? Am I going to have to worry about or can I just worry about alphanumeric sorts of characters? And then I would try to think about some edge cases here. Like, so what do we want to happen if, say, we have the root and then we try to go up a few directories from that? What is supposed to happen in that case? What would we do if there are a couple of slashes somewhere in there? Like, so if we have, say ABC//D, what is this supposed to come out to? What other kinds of edge cases could we have here? You might think about things like spaces and so forth, but I don't think that's really going to be a big deal. What we're going to end up doing here is just splitting by the / and then doing things, I think. So what are the edge cases? Or not the edge cases, but the special cases here. The special cases are the /, the dot, and 2 dots. Right? 1 dot keeping you where you're supposed, like keeping you right where you are, and 2 dots moving you up a directory. So let's see. I would ask the interviewer what to do in some of these cases, but for ours, let's just see what happens, right? So if I look at the root directory, let's see what happens if I try to go into, well, let's say bin. Where do I end up? I end up in /bin. So it seems like it's not supposed to error out or anything. It's just supposed to stay at the root. So, okay, we'll keep that in mind. And then what happens when you do the / thing? So if I go into user bin // then what happens? I end up in user bin. What if I do it a few times? Same thing. Okay. And then one other one that I might ask, I don't think that this is standard, but some shells allow you to put in, say, 3 dots and go up 2 directories. So you might ask the interviewer what you want to do in cases like that. Do you want to just assume that that's a directory name, or do you want to throw an error, or do you want to go up multiple directories? So for now, let's just assume that we're going to have it do the same thing as we would as the Unix shell itself does. And let's see if we can write some code to do this. So we'll start with simplify path, and we'll take in some path. And we'll start, so I'm going to make the path be a list to start with, which I'm going to join back together at the end. And the first thing that I'm wondering about, what happens if I have something that's like this first case, home slash home slash, and I say a dot split by /. What's the last thing? The last thing is going to be an empty string. And that's going to work out really well for us, actually, because we've seen that // doesn't move anything. So what I can do is I can say, okay, if I have an empty string, I can just ignore it and not use it, I think. So let's try that and see what happens. So what we're going to do is we're going to, so we don't want to call this path because we took in the path, so we'll call it new path. And we will take the current path and split it into, we'll just call it components. That's probably not the best name. Let's call it directories for now. Equals path.split /. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go through directories and modify new path to do what we expect it to do. So let's see. Now, I'm trying to think about right now is there any case in which having / is going to make us actually go to the root other than the very first one? Like, is there going to be some case where I'm going to have, /foo /bar / something that makes me actually go all the way up to the root other than, .. And I don't think so. We've seen that multiple slashes isn't going to do it. We've seen that anything else in there is going to be either a special command or a directory name. So I'm not going to worry about that case right now. Like, I'm wondering if there's some case where I'm just going to take something and end up eradicating everything I have in new path. And I don't think so. So, all right, good. For D in directories. And so if D is equal to 1 dot, we're going to do nothing. If D is equal to 2 dots, we're going to go up a directory, which will just be newpath.pop. Now, with that, I want to be a little careful. I want to make sure, since I have access to a REPL, what will happen if I try to pop an empty list. And let's find out. We get an index error. So we want to check, basically, if len of new path is greater than 0, then we'll pop. Otherwise, we'll do nothing. So that's good. Then the only other thing to, if we have an empty string, we're also going to pass. So let's just put that up here. And let's make this an elif. So otherwise, we are going to just append this thing onto the new path. So we'll have new path dot append d. All right, and I'm thinking that that's going to do it for that loop. And then what we need to do is we just need to join everything together at the end. So we will return, well, no, okay, it will return, well. All right, so what I'm thinking of doing is /.join new path. But this isn't going to quite work because it's going to give us, it's not going to have the / at the end, or at the beginning. We don't want it at the end. Like, so for example, if I have a equals 2, 3 here, and I say /.join a, it's going to be like 2/. Oh, okay, come on. All right, that's legit, fine. Yeah, but we need the /. Now, the question is, though, if I have this, what do I get? Because what I'm thinking of doing is just putting the / on the front of it. And that's fine. So let's just do that and see what we get. So / plus / join the new path. There might be some argument I could pass to join to make it do what I want. But for now, let's just leave it like that. And it runs, so let's look at some test cases. So what we're going to do is we're going to just, whoa. All right. Print, simplify path of, well, let's take a look at some of the test cases that we already have. So the ones that we were given to us will be /home/, and we will put at the beginning what we want it to be, which is /home. And do we get what we want? Yes. Okay, great. Let's do the next one, which is a dot b c. Except I put it in the wrong place. And so we're supposed to just get /c from that. And do we? We do indeed. Okay, good. Let's try it with the first one we came up with and I did in the wrong place again, where we're just going to test putting .. on an empty path. And that also does what we wanted. And then let's try with the 2 slashes. And this should just ignore the 2 slashes. And I did in the wrong place again. How many times am I going to do this? I'm going to do it every time. All right, let's see. /a, /b, /c, /d. And that is what we got. Now, before I say that I feel like this is complete, I want to try to think of other things that would possibly break this. Now, it says given an absolute path, so we should expect, I think, that it's going to start with a /, but we might check something that doesn't start with a / just to see what happens. So what if I just do foo/bar in both places? Does that actually work? Should it work? Let's see what it does in any case. Well, so that's not ideal, right? Because of our decision to have the / at the front. So I would want to ask the interview at this point, should I fix this so it doesn't? But it said it was going to take an absolute path. So so far I still think it's correct, but let's make it do the right thing instead. So what we will do, since if you have the forward slash at the beginning, you're going to have this kind of empty string at the beginning to start with. So let's say if directories, well, all right. So if len directories. So basically, we're going to say if we're going to check if there's a empty string at the beginning is greater than 0 and direction. All right, directories is greater than 0 and directories 0 equals the empty string. Then we will say absolute equals false. But we're going to start with it equal true, absolute equals false. All right. And then if absolute, else nothing. So now how do we do? Nah, that absolute delete. Oh. Let's put some parentheses around that. That still doesn't work. Oh, right. Because we didn't start with the forward slash. So that suggests a better way of doing this, actually, than what we have here. If when path is greater than 0, if path is 0 not equal to forward slash. And again, we would want to actually check with our interviewer whether we were going to even bother with this case or not. So let's see if that's better. That is better and nothing else broke. Okay, good. Again, this is the sort of question where you'd just be really worried about details. What other kinds of things could mess us up here? What other things are in Unix paths that we may or may not want to handle? And another one that I'm thinking of is like tilde. You know, should we actually convert that to, you know, whatever the home path is, right? I'm not going to bother with that one here, but that might be something that they would consider. Just things like that. But I'm not really seeing anything else for now, so I'm going to call this acceptable, and I'm going to stop the recording and take a look at the code and see what you think of it, and we will continue this once I've had a chance to not look at the code for a few hours and tear it to shreds then.
Alright, let's take a look at the code and at my performance. If you want a moment to make some final notes for yourself, pause the video here. Before we get started, there are a lot of things to be improved on here, and it may sound intimidating, as if you have to do all of these things to be successful. That's not true. Looking back at this interview, I think I did reasonably well. Reasonable 4 or 5 times can get you hired, but there's a margin of error, and it's better to be great 4 or 5 times instead. Let's see what we can improve on. This is a simple problem for a Facebook, Google, Amazon level interview. The only data structure in use here is a stack, and nothing is complex. This is a pure implementation problem. As an interviewer, I would expect a candidate to solve this quickly and hope to move on to a second question, even on a whiteboard. I took about 15 minutes to reach my solution, and it would have been slightly faster collaborating with an interviewer. For example, we might not have had the tangent about foo/bar. It would have been good to get to coding faster, though. Attention to detail in edge cases is very important, however, time in an interview is limited, and the balance between speed and detail is important to keep in mind. Before we get into the code itself, there are a few non-code related things to talk about. It's important to communicate with the interviewer. Always be doing something. Writing code, discussing code ideas, writing edge cases, talking about what you're thinking, anything. A common mistake is sitting silent while you're thinking. If you're silent, the interviewer has no idea what's going on in your head. Are you working through edge cases? Are you imagining data structures? Are you baffled and stuck? There's no way to know, and the interviewer will assume the worst. Additionally, if you're thinking about a hard problem, it's easy for a long time to go by without realizing it. But for someone who's sitting there watching you do nothing, 5 seconds is like an eternity. This interview was okay for pauses, although there were a couple of long ones.
So let's see.
It's fine to have a couple of 5 to 10 second pauses, but if it stretches much beyond that, it might look like you're stuck when you're just thinking. Here are a few tips. If you have a solution that seems too brute forcey, say it anyway, and say you're trying to improve upon it. If there's a particular problem you're thinking about, say what the problem is. If you have an idea in your head, say it. Communicate your thought process. One problem I had during this interview: I'm using new path as a stack in this code. I know I'm using it as a stack. I never say it's a stack. It's a good idea to highlight your knowledge when possible. Finally, if you really have nothing, ask a clarifying question of some sort. Even if you have nothing, you can collaborate with your interviewer the way you would if you were working with them. It's a great idea to record yourself doing interview problems like this using some screen capture software. See how you sound and improve how you narrate your own code. All major operating systems have screen capture software easily available. One note about this: many people find listening to their own voice to be strange since it doesn't sound the same as it does inside your head. And they don't like recording themselves because of it. I found for me this feeling goes away after a few hours of listening, so try to push through it. Continuing on, it's a good idea to listen to yourself and see what kind of verbal tics you have. In this video, there are a lot of verbal tics.
I'm covering. Am I gonna have to
When you begin, there will be a lot of these, and it's fine, especially since we're trying to fill space when talking. Be aware of them though, and see what else you can fill the space with. This will make you a more effective speaker in general. Finally, before we look at code, I was low energy during this interview practice. So maybe don't do interviews at 5:30 a.m., but more seriously, make sure you're rested and refreshed. It's important for a good interview. Enough talking about soft skills, let's look at code. There are a few minor issues and at least one bug in this code. This is a natural place to put the absolute block. It would be better at the bottom. When possible, put code near where it's used. We only use absolute in the return statement. However, if you're on a whiteboard, I wouldn't erase a bunch of stuff to make this happen, just keep it in mind. Next, in 2 places, we used len greater than 0 to check if a list is empty or not. Better Python style here is to use if list instead. I'll put some links in the description to some good reading about Python style. There are a few other test cases I didn't think of during the interview. Slash and slash slash are cases we could have tried, but more important is the empty string, which actually exposes a bug. If the length of the string is 0, then absolute remains true. If we're trying to handle the non-absolute case, we must handle the empty string, and it's a good test regardless. Having found things that could have gone better during this interview, 2 questions come to mind. How do you find these things in your own code? And once you've found them, how do you improve? The easiest way to find them in your own code is to have them pointed out to you by someone else. Ask a mentor to review your code or find a study partner to do a swap with. You review their code, they review yours. Even at the same skill level, you'll often each find things by looking at code with fresh eyes. Another way to do it is to make yourself have fresh eyes. Put the code aside, sleep on it, and then look at it the next day or a few days later. When the code isn't as fresh in your mind, it's easier to find these kinds of problems. Finally, there are many resources for finding these kinds of problems on the internet, and I'll put links in the description for the ones I talk about here. Use them, especially those with a problem discussion area, such as HackerRank or Project Euler. Study other people's solutions, better or worse, and look for what they did differently than you. Then, try to incorporate the improvements in your own code. So once you've found the things you can improve on, what should you do about it? There's always doing more practice, but you could also consider using tools to remind you about mistakes you've made and how to improve them. One tool I like is Anki. Anki is a flashcard program that uses spaced repetition to show you cards less often the better you remember them, and more often when you forget. This way, you can do the minimum work per day reviewing. For example, in this video, I made the style mistake of checking for an empty list with len. I can make a flashcard to remind me. For things that you can express as simple questions, or where you can say in a binary way, I got this right easily, this can be a powerful tool. I have a similar deck for command line utilities. We'll stop there for now. Keep in mind, we're not going to be perfect in an interview. Everyone will make mistakes. You can make mistakes and still succeed. What's important is how you approach your mistakes and improve upon them. Do you have other thoughts about this code? Other mistakes that I made that you noticed? Would you have hired me or passed on me, and why? Let me know and let others know in the comment section below. Next time, we're going to take a break from problem solving and take a look at Big O notation. We use Big O notation a lot to discuss our solutions, and this will be a primer for people who are not as familiar with it. I hope you got something out of this video. If you have any questions, comments, something I've missed, or problems you want answered or covered, let me know in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, it would be great if you liked the video, subscribed, or both. I really appreciate it. See you here next time on Coder Snacks.